Hey guys, Mr. Mills here. Today we're looking at solving quadratics using the quadratic formula number 2 notes. Okay. At the end of this video, you should be able to solve a quadratic using the quadratic formula and give your answer in simplest radical form. Okay. The only real difference between this lesson and the last lesson is how we're giving our solutions. Today we're going to give the exact solutions. Okay, and that means that we're going to be writing it in simplest radical form. Okay. So let's go through a couple problems. It says, find the exact solutions to each quadratic equation. Okay, we already know how to go through the formula. We want to identify our A, our B value, and our C value. Okay, make sure that you take careful notice of those negatives and that you use them correctly as you go through the problem. So X equals opposite B. In this case, B is -1, so opposite of that would be positive. Plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C, all over 2A. Oops, and not A, because A we know is 1. Okay, so now we're going through simplifying that. X equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 1. Remember that as we go through and simplify this, we want to keep this paired together, or grouped together, okay? Not including the negative sign out there. So minus, and it becomes -44 over 2. So 1 plus 44 is 45. So X equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 45 over 2. Okay, and we need to simplify, because we're given an exact answer and 45 is not a perfect square. We're going to leave this in simplest radical form by simplifying radical 45. So radical 45 breaks down to 9 and 5, 3 and 3. We have 3 radical 5. So X equals 1 plus or minus 3 radical 5 over 2. Now as we split this, right, 1 plus 3 radical 5 over 2 and 1 minus 3 radical 5 over 2, there's not a whole lot that we can do here to simplify it any further than what we have written here. Okay, so we'll just write our final answer as 1 plus or minus 3 radical 5 over 2. All right, number 2. 7x squared minus 10x plus 1. This is one of those problems that we're glad that quadratic formula is around for, because A is a big number and everything else seems pretty small. B is -10 and C is 1. All right, so X equals opposite B, which in this case is 10, plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C, all over 2 times A, which is 2 times 7. All right, so X equals 10 plus or minus the square root of 100 minus 28 over 14. Okay, so simplifying that further, we have X equals 10 plus or minus the square root of 72 over 14. And then I'm going to simplify radical 72, because radical 72 can be simplified. 36 and 2. 36 is a perfect square. So we have X equals 10 plus or minus 6 radical 2 over 14. So as I'm looking here, we kind of already explained, like, splitting these apart won't necessarily help us simplify it further. So we don't need to split it when we're left with a radical like this. But we can simplify if our numbers on the outside have common factors, right? Remember our rule with radicals is inside by inside, outside by outside. And so here we look, numbers on the outside, 10, 6, 14, all even. I can factor 2 out, and so I do that, and I'm left with 5 plus or minus 3 radical 2 over 7. Okay, and that's because 2 goes into all of these. Okay, and that's our answer. Okay, how many solutions did each of these problems have? They all had 2. Okay, please don't get confused by them being grouped together because we have that plus or minus. Remember, that is our way of saying, like, hey, we're doing 2 things to this. Is either adding or subtracting. So you see that plus or minus in both of those situations. That is us saying there's 2 solutions here. Okay. To reduce these problems, you need to be able to divide out a number out of 3 numbers. Okay, that's all the numbers on the outside of the radical. Okay, and so notice that that's what we did in that top problem. We did not just do 14 and 6, or there's no time where you can only do 2 of them. Okay. All right, so let's look at this last problem. It says, find the exact solutions of 2x squared plus 6x equals 3. Okay, try this out. Okay, so as we go, before we start, we should we should definitely make this equal 0. So 2x squared plus 6x minus 3 equals 0. Identify A, B, and C. Okay, and then plug in our values. So into our formula, x equals opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all over 2a. Okay, so as I got that done, all right, make sure I group that together. I've got negative 6 plus or minus square root of 36, that's 8, minus 24 over 4. Okay, so minus and negative, that means I'm adding. So I have negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 60 over 4. So look at 60, I'm going to break that down. 60 goes into 15 and 4, 2 and 2, 5 and 3, all prime. So I have 2 radical 15. So then here I have negative 6 plus or minus 2 radical 15 over 4. As I look for 2, negative 6, all even, so I can factor 2 out of each of these, I'm left with negative 3 plus or minus, you can say 1 radical 15 over 2. Okay. And so my final answer here. All right, so that's factoring or solving quadratics using the quadratic formula and leaving the exact answer. See ya.